I'm the director of the Med Lab Science program. I'm fairly new here, so when she says expert, I'm going to say that Roberta is actually the expert. She's been here a long time and has so much knowledge about the program. And if you do enter the program, you're going to get to know Roberta very, very well because she's kind of like the heart and soul. Roberta, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, that sounds great. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to hearing your questions. Yes, I have been here for a while. Both Rhonda and I are proud graduates of the program. And actually, Rhonda was when I started teaching, she was in my first clinical class. So there is some gray hair up here somewhere. But very pleased to have you all with us. I am the program coordinator and also an associate professor here in the Med Lab Science program. And in case you're wondering and want to come by, we live up on the 5th floor of ECHA. So I'm going to pass it back to Rhonda and we'll get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Roberta. Now, before we begin, I always like to start off on the right foot. I like to acknowledge that the University of Alberta is located on territory that was lived on and traveled upon and played on by folks who became part of Treaty 6, as well as Inuit and Métis people. And I want to express gratitude for the First Peoples of Turtle Island, who we were respectful stewards of the land long before my predecessors settled here. So just really grateful to work, live, and play here. And I think that sets the tone for a really good time together. So I'm going to share my screen so that you are able to see what we have to offer. Oh, my screen sharing is disabled. Danielle, sorry.
Are you good now?
Okay, let's try now. Yeah, good. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get into presentation mode after this goes away. Okay, go away. Go away. Go away. And there we go. Yay, we're up. Hopefully everybody can see that. So as we mentioned, we're part of the Medical Lab Science program at the University of Alberta. Basically, we are training people to become medical laboratory professionals. The beauty of our program is that you're an MLS grad with a BSc, and you also have a professional designation. So who are we as med lab professionals? Who are we? A lot of people think that we look like this. A lot of people might think that we look like this. And maybe even this. This is a more modern context. But really, we look like this. This is Dr. Susan Naherniak, who was a grad of our program, who went on to become a medical doctor. We look like this. This is Hardeep. She's one of our instructors, and she also currently works in a hematology lab as well as instructing in our program. And they look like this. This is Eugene. Eugene is I think his title is manager of molecular. I could be wrong about that, but he's kind of like a big deal in the molecular diagnostics field. So you can see that we don't look the way that we are portrayed on various forms of media. So that's great. Maybe we've busted a couple stereotypes for you. But what do we actually do? So this is a question that we get asked all the time. Are you a doctor? No. Are you a nurse? No. Well, what do you do? Do you collect blood? Well, we learn how to collect blood, but that's really not our job. That's what lab assistants do. But basically, when clinicians have questions, so if your doctor is like, I suspect that this person is diabetic, I need to find out for sure, then we have the answer. Okay, so they'll send you for some blood work and then they'll be able to tell whether you're diabetic or not, because the actual diagnosis of diabetes occurs because of lab results. Okay, So we are also what we call the foundation of care. So 60 to 70% of patient care decisions are based on our results. And at least 80% of any guidelines that are developed to establish a diagnosis or manage a disease require lab results. So we are involved in all aspects of healthcare. Now, we are here for other healthcare professionals, but we're also here for you. This is a poster that was created by the Canadian Society for Medical Lab Science, who is our national certifying body for the medical laboratory technologists and lab assistants. And they are the National Professional Society for Canada's Medical Laboratory Professionals. The message here highlights that we are the hidden hero in everyone's healthcare journey. I always say it's like we're the lighting in the movie. You wouldn't have a movie without the lighting. We are highly trained medical professionals. We sort, we analyze, and we run tests on your samples to provide accurate results that are vital to your healthcare, not only for diagnosis, but also for how to be treated. So monitoring somebody's glucose or hemoglobin A1C, those are markers of diabetes. Your physician or your pharmacist can adjust your medication depending on what those results are. Okay. We see our patients as no one else does. I actually think Roberta came up with a phrase that's, we see patients differently, because we do. We see them kind of from the inside out. We're there for you. We're there for your mom. We're there for your dad, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your friends, your partner, your child. That's what we are. All right, so how do we do what we do? Well, there's 5 main areas of the lab that we work in. And of course, there's sub areas that come off of those areas as well, but we're going to go over the 5 general areas. So the first one that I like to talk about is anatomical pathology, because that's where I used to work. Then chemistry, hematology, microbiology, and transfusion medicine. And you might be going like, what the heck is that? So let me tell you all about it. So anatomical pathology. So what we do is we basically work with the tissues of the body. We do autopsies. We test the tissues. Have you ever wondered where the body parts go when they're removed from your body when you get surgery? So if you've ever had your appendix out, or if you've had your tonsils out, where the heck do they go? Like they're, do they put them in the trash? No, they come to the anatomical pathology lab. They get dissected, and then we put them on slides and we test them for all kinds of things. Now, the main thing that we do in the anatomical pathology lab is we test for cancer. Okay, that's typically what we're testing for, but there's lots of other things we test for as well. Next is clinical chemistry. So in chemistry, we're working with like the fluids of the body typically. So it could be anything from the serum in the blood. It could be synovial fluid, which is the fluid in your joints. It could be urine. There's a variety of things that we work with, and we determine chemistry levels, hormone levels, and drug levels. So when they say on a fictional show, and I say fictional and I emphasize that because it's never real, when they say they want a tox screen, we would be doing that, although we don't call it that. That's wrong, but that is who would be doing the tox screen. Another common test, as I've already mentioned, is blood glucose test for diabetes. That's done in the chemistry lab. And the next is hematology. So the picture you're seeing is actually a smear of blood. So the little donut looking things, those are your red blood cells. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there that are white blood cells, the bigger like purpley looking cells. And then there's little dots in there that are your platelets. So hematology is the study of blood. That's literally what we do. Not blood splatter, okay, but actually the blood and the components of the blood. So there are lots of conditions that are identified and monitored in hematology, including blood cancers. But a really common test would be hemoglobin, which tests for anemia. So people who are really tired, they go to the doctor, they're like, oh, I'm always tired, I don't know why, and they can't really figure it out. they'll send they'll do a CBC, and those results will help to inform the doctor that you indeed have anemia. Next is microbiology. Now, micro was my favorite when I was in school because to me, it's like gardening. You plant the organisms on a plate and then they grow like a garden. It's really, really cool, and it's extremely hands-on. So basically, microbiology is identifying bacteria, fungi, viruses, and parasites in all kinds of samples. Okay, so they don't just, like in chemistry, you usually do fluids. In pathology, you're working on tissue. In hematology, you're working on blood. In micro, you work on all different kinds of samples because anything can be infected. It can be your skin, it can be your eyeball fluid, which is vitreous fluid. It can be anything. So yeah, a common test in micro would be like a throat swab for strep throat. The other thing that you might even be more familiar with is the PCR testing for COVID. That was all done in the lab, and that's a molecular test, but typically done in a microbiology lab. And last but certainly not least is transfusion science or transfusion medicine. So this is where we perform the compatibility of blood units. So if you go to Canadian Blood Services and you donate your blood, somebody working in transfusion medicine would test that blood to see what kind of antigens you have on your red blood cells. Like what are you? Are you A? Are you B? Are you O? And then they're going to look to see if you're positive or negative. All of that will have meaning to you when you come into the program. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and you'll even learn how to do that. So this is typically, it can be just like ABO-RH, like I just said, so O positive, B negative, AB positive, but it could also be like a screening tool in preparation for a surgical procedure. We do type and screen before that, as well as a variety of other testing on people who may have received too many blood transfusions and now are really sensitized and it might cause some reactions. So it's really helpful to the clinicians that are treating patients by giving them units of blood. All right. So aside from all the cool things that we just showed you that you can do, and of course, there's way more than that. That's just like a smattering. Why else would you want to be a lab professional? Well, this is a quote from our landing page, and Roberta's going to put that into the chat, the link to that into the chat, so you can click on it at any time. The quote is, MLS grads enjoy a great paying career with excellent work-life balance, high demand across Canada, and the potential to live and work in the USA and abroad. Okay, so grads of our program make good money. They have the ability to travel. They have a tremendous amount of career options kind of at their fingertips. And it's an excellent work-life balance. We have one fairly recent grad who lives in Canmore and spends her free time skiing and snowboarding because that's what she likes to do. It's like her dream, right? So she's got this great job, she's living in the mountains, and she's able to do the things that she loves because she has this wonderful career. And the career itself is satisfying. So that's good. So why else? Well, this comes from the ALIS website. You can see that our average wage is $44 an hour, $74,000 a year, and average hours are 32 per week. Now that's an average. Typically we work full time, and so we're working in a clinical lab like 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7, depending on what shift you're on. Some labs have shift work, some don't. Some people like to have shift work because it's a little bit different on each shift. But there's tons of opportunity for so many varieties of things to do. So that's another good reason why this is a great career. All right, so I don't want you to just take my word for it. I want you to hear from somebody who graduated. Now, I came to realize today that she graduated a long time ago, but she is just like one of the most dynamic, fabulous people you'll ever meet. Her name is Anne. And she's going to describe to you her experience in the MLS program. So I'm just going to hit play and listen to what Anne has to say about us. Okay, can you hear it? Just checking in. Were you able to hear the music?
I couldn't on my end.
You couldn't? Okay, I'm gonna have to do something. So one moment, because I just realized that there, share sound. Okay, let me know if you can hear it or not. Oops. Can you hear it?
Hi, my name is Anne Halpin. I graduated from Medical Laboratory Science, the BSc program at U of A in 1992, which seems crazy now. It's in my mind, 1990s is still 10 years ago, but that is not the case. So I graduated at the time. It's a very different landscape to now. As far as job opportunities, now there are so many, but at the time it was trickier. There was fewer positions available. So I spent a little time working here in my still current field of HLA, which is the histocompatibility testing for transplant. I did that here for a while. I worked in the United States for a while also, and because I was able to do that with a United States licensing exam that I wrote. And I lived in, after there, I lived in Ireland for a while, where I also worked in lab, different flavor. I worked in chemistry there for a while, and I did another degree. And then I moved back to Edmonton, where I still work in the Edmonton histocompatibility, which is the HLA lab, the matching we do for transplant compatibility testing. Science. I think one of the really strong things about doing a BSc in med lab science is that you finish with a profession. And so you have a BSc, which is always valuable and always portable, but you also have a career. You have exposure to an actual job. You know, we don't call it a co-op when we do our placement in the hospital labs or the base labs, other labs that are that we rotate through, but it essentially is like a co-op program. We just don't call it that. So you finish, you know what lab is, you've had hands-on experience, you are ready to write a licensing exam, and you're ready to go to work. And there are so many job opportunities right now, and not just in areas of the lab that we might see on TV or have a perception of, but there's if you prefer the hands-on testing, there are areas of the lab that are still very hands-on testing. If you prefer to work with a big instrument and do that, those are opportunities as well, and you can move within those areas of the lab. You're not ever married to one specific thing. You can, within your career, throughout your career, continue to evolve and do different things if that's what you want to do, or stay where you are if that fills your bucket. But it's a profession, and it's a profession that really is in the background supporting patient care that is a really critical part of healthcare, even if we don't see that in a day-to-day way. It's a lot of opportunity, and it's you really are ready to hit the ground running when you finish with this degree. There is definitely, I think, a lab persona. You definitely need to be detail orientated. You need to enjoy, I think, be curious. I think that is important, but maybe that's important in life anyway. But I think that there are different areas of the lab will appeal to different people in different ways. So if you are if you prefer to be, doing your thing day to day, maybe you're not an extrovert, then you can absolutely find an area of the lab that will work well for you. If you prefer to be more interactive and forward facing, interacting with other individuals, there are different roles in the lab that do that, either within the lab or outside the lab. So for example, our Tech 2s in our area of the lab, the ones who are more sort of in the middle supervisory roles, they're constantly interacting with the transplant coordinators and physicians and other people. They do training for the coordinators. So there certainly are opportunities to do more interaction with other individuals if that's what you want to do. It is there's a whole bunch of different roles in the lab. There's more data focused roles. There's roles that are more sort of, I feel, sciencey, where you're actually doing still more manual types of testing and more of the maybe esoteric areas of the lab. So lab is more diverse than probably we see or we think of when before we're introduced to it. there are many different types of roles you can play in the lab, and I'm sure there's something for everybody. We are not interacting every day with patients. That is a truth of the lab. But every single sample that passes through the lab is a patient. Every single sample is somebody's parent, child, sister, brother. It's a real person. And in some areas of the lab, that becomes a little bit more obvious when you see maybe repeat samples from the same patients that you're working on all the time. Our area of the lab is one of those areas because we have follow-up patients in transplant, so we see them, we track them, we feel like, sometimes it's strange, sometimes I feel like I know them, even though I don't know them, obviously. And I think that no matter what, there's always a patient involved. But some areas you definitely see that more than others. And I think keeping that in mind, regardless of the area of the lab that you're in, will make you a better lab technologist always, because you always want to think of your role and acknowledge our role, our key role in healthcare. If we don't acknowledge our own role, who will? We are an essential part of, every oncology diagnosis and treatment plan. 70% of healthcare, decisions is the statistic that's generally shared, saying that, if you want to be diagnosed and treated, in many cases that involves the lab. And we don't necessarily see the person, but we are a part of their story in the lab. And we are, we are a part of their healthcare treatment plan and diagnostic plan. And ultimately, without the support of the lab, healthcare cannot do its job. And so I think reminding ourselves of that is really important, because it is, it's harder to not think of the patient. It's harder to think of the patient when you're not immediately faced with a patient, but every single sample is a patient, and we are involved in that patient's journey and story as laboratory professionals.
All right, so that is Anne. She's quite spectacular. So, oh, we don't want to do that one again. Stop. Okay, there we go. My apologies. All right, so now what? So now I'm sure you've all decided, I definitely want to do this. I want to be in the MLS program. It's certainly for me. So what are you going to do now? And actually, Roberta, would you like to take this part, because you are the expert in this? I'll just do the slides for you. But yeah, you feel free to describe what they need to do.
Okay. So this is a chance to introduce you to a little bit more of the application process. And of course, if there are any questions, please jot those down so we can answer them for you. Now with this and kind of the now what, I'm just going to put a link up before I start here. And that's going to be to our letter of intent. Okay, so that's going to be important as well. So there are certain prerequisites that you do need. And a 2.7 GPA out of 4.0 overall in these 10 courses. Now we've made a revision this year, and we changed out one of our either genetics, biology, microbiology, or zoology, and we made it the science or math for 3 units of course weight. So really in the Faculty of Science, pretty much any course or one that's titled math can be used. So general chemistry, we consider like your inorganic chemistry, then there's organic chem. Stats, of course, very important for us. And then any option, any faculty. So if you took, philosophy or Christian studies or music, and you had, the mark was good enough, then the register took a look and said, that's the any option. And we really do mean any option from any faculty. Normally, our application date is March 1st. That's our cutoff. But this year we've extended it to April 1st. So please get those applications in before April 1st. Earlier, the better. For those who might be thinking, I have more courses to take this year, but I'm going to apply next year. Applications open on October 1st of every year for the application cycle. Letter of intent is due May 1st, and that's why I put that link up in the chat. That will guide you in terms of how to prepare your letter of intent and how to submit it and things that we're actually looking for. We have the interview as to be determined. It is usually run on a Zoom platform. And basically, we've had it in the past up until early June, somewhere in late May, early June. That's why we have to be determined. We have yet to determine an exact date for that, but it is online. Okay, so we do it with an online platform. Once you are accepted into the program, and the committee meets towards the end of June every year, the committee actually considers different things. We consider the 2 grade point averages or GPAs. So the prerequisites where you need a minimum of 2.7 GPA to apply. For the overall or cumulative GPA, it would be your work in post-secondary that you've done full-time, fall or winter. So say you went to MacEwan and you went to the U of A and you went full-time, fall, winter for both, the register would look at all of your transcripts for fall, winter, and that would help determine the overall or cumulative GPA. The committee also looks at your letter of intent. We also look at your grades for your pre-professional courses. And then we also look at interview and the interview score. And then if you are accepted into the program, you get a letter in what you would consider, I guess, Launchpad. I call it Slate, so I see it just a bit differently than you would. And it would say, you've been accepted, here's what you need to do next. So there is a $500 non-refundable tuition deposit or hold, basically. You put down the $500. If you do come into the program, then that is applied towards your tuition fee. And you start your 3-year journey with us.
So, do you have questions? Thanks, Roberta.
You're welcome. I'm just going to also put up our short vanity website. And that will take you to our landing page, which we've just had recently redesigned, and we're very excited. There it is. And there's a nice QR code to scan as well. And it's a little bit longer than our initial landing page, but I think it's much more exciting and provides some more detail right off the top that people might like to see or things they might like to read. So certainly please do go ahead and have a look at that.
Wonderful.
We do have some questions coming in,
Hey,
which are great.
awesome.
So first one, are these courses needed to be completed only for fall and winter? Am I just taking 2 more I'm just taking 2 more courses in spring. I'm just wondering if this works or not.
Okay. So thank you for that question. Normally it's fall and winter. If you take courses in the spring term at the University of Alberta, you would still be considered, because those transcripts will reach the register either on or very near to the June 15th cutoff. We cannot wait for outside courses, which may run close to the end of June, because we will be meeting and deciding on applicants that we're going to accept. So if you can get it done here in the spring, that's great. There may be a spot on your application where you can indicate that to the registrar's office, but you need to make sure it is a spring course here at the U of A, and summer course, even at the U of A, would be too late.
Amazing. Is this presentation recorded to watch later? Yes, we are recording this presentation, and it will be posted in our on-demand webpage. So if you go to uab.ca/on-demand, it'll be posted there, most likely in the next few weeks. Is there an undergrad program that is preferred for a student to take to get into the program? What if you get accepted to the Faculty of AILS at the U of A? As long as you have the prereqs, can you apply to the program?
Absolutely. There is no preference for where you come from before you apply to the program. So AILS would be fine. We get a lot of science students, but we do get some from AILS. We get some from engineering, some from arts. So as long as you have those pre-professional courses and you satisfy everything else that the register has on your checklist for you. For example, some might be if you were an international student, for example, it would be your course descriptions officially translated into English. You would have to supply those. For the English language requirements, it's not just the written English, but it's also for the professional programs, a lot of us require a test for spoken English. And there's varieties of tests you can do, including still the Duolingo test. And then you would take that, and that would satisfy that part of your checklist.
Amazing. If you have a Bachelor's of Science, graduated with a lower than 2.7 GPA requirement, and have an MLA certificate, would you still be considered as a candidate?
I would say no. With the MLA certificate, that's more specific for MLA. We don't require that as a prerequisite to get into the program. I mean, it could certainly, benefit you because you have done medical lab assisting work. If you are lower than a 2.7 GPA for your pre-professional, then your application would not be valid. For the competitive or overall GPA, because it varies, I tell people try for at least a 3. If I look at our folks who've got into the program in the last 3 or 4 years on a GPA scale out of 4.0, probably the average, and again, it's an average, so there's people above and people below, would probably be around a 3.3, 3.4 out of 4.
If you don't have all the prerequisites and are planning to get them next year, can you still take second-year courses for the program?
No, because it's a ladder. So when you start with us, you're in year 2, and you're actually starting out with courses that will lead you further into the program. There are certain courses that you could take, say things like your options. So for example, if you are planning on finishing your prereqs next year, that's great. Please still do apply. And you haven't, say, taken Physiology 210 or the equivalent, and you haven't taken your Biochem 200, I would say take those, because if not, you would take them in year 2 of the program. And then that would actually put you up to a full course load with us in the first year with us. Year 2 is actually 37 units of course weight. So it's a very heavy year. You may also have some arts or science options that we could potentially transfer the credit for in year 4 of the program. So you might want to consider those as well. The big thing about when people ask, I tell them when they're taking, courses like another year, is do what you like as well, because you want to make sure that overall or cumulative GPA is going to be really good. So take the courses that you need to, take the route that you're going, consider us as well, and definitely balance your courses. Take things that are going to be enjoyable for you as well, and you're going to do well in.
I guess this one kind of goes along with it. Could you complete 2 years of undergrad and then apply? Do you have to complete 4 complete years?
No. We actually have a variety, and it's really quite interesting. It's shifted over the years. We used to get a lot of students who would, say, be in their first year, and they had the courses and they would apply, or they'd be going into their second year, or they would do a spring. Now we're seeing more students apply who have 2+ years, sometimes even 3 years, and even some who have completed their Bachelor of Science or other degree and decide that they want a profession to come out with. They haven't quite found what they're looking for yet.
Couple questions on how many students are accepted to each year, and then it goes along with the next one. They heard that there was an increase in seats available, and is that change permanent?
Yes,
Sure.
Go right
if I
ahead,
answer
Rhonda.
this one? Yeah. So typically we take 29. Okay, that is typically what we get. The government we did apply for a grant that we were granted, and for next year there will be 43 spots open, not 42, and it is not permanent. It's based on the grant funding. So it'll be 42 for next year and 39 for the year after. Okay, and then we will drop back down to 29 unless we magically get another grant. And then we'll see what happens. But it's always a mystery. But typically we are 29.
Amazing. a career type question. Could I go into forensic science with an MLS degree? Lots of job sites say degrees like biology or chemistry are wanted. So would I still have a good chance of getting into forensics field with this type of degree?
I
You
would
wanna
say
s-
yes, and Roberta can, you
Mhm.
you can back me up with that, but we have a lot of our students that end up working for like the medical examiner, but go ahead, Roberta.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, we do have a lot of our, some of our students who work for the medical examiner's office. They also work in, say, forensic toxicology. We do have some graduates. It's a little bit harder to get into, but they actually work for forensics with the RCMP.
Yeah.
It took them quite a while to get there, but they were persistent and that's what they wanted. And that's where they are now. So it is certainly a possibility.
Yeah, we had one graduate who ended up doing a lot of the lab testing for the Picton case in Vancouver. So they worked with the RCMP on that.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right?
So the student that wanted to take those 2 courses in the spring, do I apply under open studies? I can kind of take that one.
Yeah.
You could apply to open studies at the U of A to do those 2 courses because you can only take 2 per term in open studies. So if 2 is all you need to take, you can definitely do it at the U of A. Or if you don't get into the U of A open studies, most people do. There are also limited courses at the U of A for open studies. So just make sure that those 2 courses you need to take are available to be taken. If you can't do them at the U of A, there are many other institutions around the city where you can take equivalent course to many of the prerequisite courses that are required.
Yeah, and again, I would just be careful of those spring deadlines because what we find is I had looked at, say, MacEwan one year, but they actually didn't finish their courses until June 26th. And by then it would be too late. So yes, definitely check out the university for the U of A for open studies courses.
Yeah, that's a great point. Do you have any tips for the application process or for making my application stand out?
In terms of tips, everybody basically completes the same application through the Launchpad portal. And to stand out, for example, it could be with that interview that we do. Okay, that might be one of the bigger places that you actually might stand out. So the application process is pretty standard.
Yeah. And just make sure, like Roberta had put the link for the letter of intent. Go to that webpage and actually read it, go through it, follow what it says, because we do have very specific things that we look for in the letter of intent. So
Yes.
What is the spoken English score required for the IELTS academic test? That you can find online. All of the different spoken English requirement tests are online and what the minimum scores are required to be. If medical laboratory science has a specific score required, it will be in their academic requirements on their webpage as well.
Right. And we follow what is in with the registrar's office for both written and spoken English. So when you find that there, it would also apply to us as well in medical laboratory science.
Do you only focus on the GPA of the required prerequisite courses, or do you also consider the GPA of recent coursework?
Okay, so it would be definitely the GPA of the required pre-professional courses. And I wouldn't say just recent coursework, but it's all of your coursework done full-time in fall or winter term. So as I was saying, if you say went to MacEwan and U of A, and then you decided you wanted to go to Calgary and take a couple terms at Mount Royal, those would all count. And the register would look at all of those GPAs.
Are there any extracurriculars required for admission other than the requirements listed on the website?
No, it's what's on the website. So
and you mentioned that typically 29 students get in. How many students usually apply each year?
if I went back in time to do a synopsis, usually around well over 100.
Yeah.
Now, what we noticed with COVID and coming through COVID, and we've noticed this with some of our other professional programs at the university as well, is applications have gone down. So we might be, say, down in the 70s now. So we're certainly welcoming applications if you think this might be for you and you meet the requirements. definitely do apply.
To practice in Alberta, do we need the CMLTA registration in addition to the CSMLS?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
You certainly do.
CSMLS provides the licensing exam, and they're a great resource. I still register with the CSMLS always. But CMLTA is actually what gives us permission to work in Alberta. So that's a good way to look at it, is you need that. It's a permit to work, and you cannot work unless you are registered with the CMLTA. So in Alberta.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, for sure.
Do we have to finish all the prerequisites in 1 year for a better chance to get in?
No, I would say not. The reason we like to see people finish in 1 year, if possible, and we know it's not always possible, is because a full-time year would be considered 30 units of course weight. Our first year is 37, and then we go to 30, and then it's between 27 and 30 in the final year, and some people take anywhere from 24 up, some take less. But because that first year, students tend to find particularly heavy in our program, our year 2, with those 37 units of course weight, it's a good idea to make sure you've got your feet under you and you feel well anchored to take a very full course load. So our courses, for example, like say in the fall term, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you might go and you have a break somewhere in there, but you might be in class or the winter term, from either 8 or 9 in the morning till potentially 4 in the afternoon. And then there's labs on those days. And then a lot of times our labs on Tuesdays and Thursdays run full 3 hours in the morning. They can run full 3 hours in the afternoon. So it really, really is busy.
If you apply and don't get in right away, can you reapply for the following year?
Absolutely. Yes.
Please do.
Are there opportunities for one-on-one mentorship or to work closely with faculty on projects?
Yes. One of the coolest things about this program is that in your final year, you get to do a research project where you are like the researcher. Usually it's under mentorship with somebody who's quite spectacular in the faculty. So I did mine under Dr. George Zimbrowski, who was the clinical chemist for the U of A for a long time. And I learned so much under him, and I was so grateful for that opportunity. So absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, and I remember I did my research project, just a while ago, in my final year, and the rapid drug test kit we were working on, I actually wound up using in my work when I got out into the field. So that was actually very exciting.
That's super cool. For the 6 units of English, can it be 3 units of English and 3 of writing studies, or does it need to be all 6 English specific?
No, you can do 3 units of English and 3 units of the writing studies, WRS. There are some writing studies that are not accepted, though. They become too specialized, but I would say the 101 and 102 should be accepted. You couldn't have 2 of them. You'd have to match one of them with 3 units in English.
That's a good question. Can I do my prerequisites at the University of Calgary?
Yes, you can. And one thing I will say is you can do them at a lot of different post-secondaries across the province or across Canada. It is up to the applicant to make sure that wherever you take your courses, they're going to be equivalent to our pre-professional. So sometimes people will write and say, can you tell me what this equivalent is? And I say, I'm really sorry, but I can't. It falls back on the applicant. So that might mean conversing with an advisor at the University of Calgary, or say, in Red Deer, at Polytechnic, and saying, what have you seen as equivalent from the University of Alberta?
And a little tip on equivalencies is we did just create a transfer credit search tool at the U of A, and it includes institutions from all over the world. So if you are coming from BC or the U of C or Ontario, A lot of big research intensive universities are in that list. So you can see exactly that it transfers to the U of A and to the specific course that MLS does require.
That is very helpful.
Yes, thank goodness we finally have it. What kind of support does the program offer in preparing for national certification exams?
So I'll say we offer internal support as people go through the program. You can certainly come and review as you get closer to the exam, any of your exams, any of your quizzes, chat with your instructors, talk with them. We do have flashcards and a very dense looking book full of questions. Granted, it is from the States, but a lot will still apply here to writing the certification exam with the Canadian Society for Medical Laboratory Science, or CSMLS. We are looking at, students have had suggestions on how we might help prepare them better. So that's something that we're constantly looking at as well. But a lot of it is looking at items as you go. And just before the students will write, we do offer a little workshop for them to help them navigate preparing for the exam, but more about writing the exam, things to look for, that type of thing. And that's for our students when they're in-house.
Does Bio 207 count towards the 3 units of molecular genetics requirement?
Yes, that is the course.
Yeah.
You
It's what I
can have
took.
others, but that's the one.
That's a fun course. I love
Yeah,
that course.
It's good.
Do you recognize coursework completed at smaller institutions?
Yes, as long as it's equivalent. So when we think about, going around the province, there's Northwestern Polytechnic, Grand Prairie. We have had some courses come from Keano up in Fort McMurray, all the way down to Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, Red Deer, Mount Royal, King's College here for some courses, Concordia University of Edmonton. So yes, some of the smaller institutions, yes, you just want to make sure that they are considered equivalent.
Utilize that transfer search tool that we have.
Exactly. Exactly.
The smaller ones are in there as well.
And is there a link for that by chance?
Yeah, it's found on the transfer webpage. So
Okay.
if students just go to uab.ca/transfer, it's linked right on there and you can get right to it.
Perfect. Excellent.
Yeah. Due to the small intake sizes, are the courses required in the second year, the first pre-professional year, done in a cohort, or are there multiple classes and timings available?
Okay, so the second year, and Emily, correct me if I'm jumping years on you. So after your first pre-professional, I'm thinking maybe post, there you go. Okay, thank you. I'm thinking you're talking about our year 2, so our first year in the program. They are done in cohort form because we basically see our students Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, 9 to 5. Everything is done together in cohort.
So you really get to know your classmates.
Yes, you do.
You do.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the benefits because you become very close knit. I know that I still talk to my cohort on a regular basis. And actually next door to me is Yelena, who is part of the grad program. She's the director of grad studies and she was in my cohort. So we're now working together. So
Super cool. Do MLTs have to do phlebotomy?
you have to learn.
Yes, you do have to learn.
Yeah.
You may or may not do it out on the job. Just from personal experience, I worked and managed in rural sites, and yes, I did. So we teach you how. We teach you how to do finger pokes as well. And it might be something that you utilize when you get out into practice, or don't utilize as much, or maybe don't utilize at all. But yes, and it is part of the competency profile that has to be completed for the national body, the CSMLS, before you can write that certification exam.
And one of the cool things about it is there's sometimes researchers and whatnot that need phlebotomists to come and take blood for their investigations. And sometimes you'll get paid for that because I know that I did participate in a couple of those. So it was kind of like extra bonus income. So
I guess that's one thing we should mention too, is some of our students, when they're in the program with us, they say, well, could I work as a medical lab assistant? And yes, you can, depending on what the tasks are, but people apply and they might say work in what we call planting, or where they help set up specimens in microbiology, or they actually do phlebotomy in the hospitals or the patient service centers. So that certainly can be something that you could potentially do during your time with us before you're eligible to write the national general certification exam for medical lab technologists.
Okay, we don't have any other questions in the Q&A right now. We have about 7 minutes left.
Oh my gosh, the time went fast.
I
I know.
know.
I wanted to share something with the participants if I could.
Go for it.
So just so you all know, I was not like one of in my time, it was like the top, I think we had 18 students in my cohort. I was not one of the top 18. I was 19. And then we had somebody drop out in the first week or so. And so they approached me and they're like, do you want this spot? And I'm like, heck yes, I do. So I got into the program late. You know, I went back to school after being out of school for a long time. I had children when I went back to school. So I did get in after my first year, but it was weird. And it was, you know, like I had to learn how to learn again. It was very challenging, but I'm going to tell you that it was the best thing I ever did, because not only like you got so much bang for your buck because you got a BSc at the same time you got an opportunity to work. So I just want to reiterate like how valuable it is. And I know there's another question in there, but I just want you to know that you can do it. It's hard, but it is so worthwhile. It is amazing. It's a great experience that'll last a lifetime. So
I second that.
I love that. That's a great first-hand experience. Is the interview MMI or with an actual person?
I'll say it's both in a way. We still follow somewhat of a multiple mini interview format, but because it is online, lately we have had either several interviewers per person or question, or we've done like an individual interview where one person is giving several questions. But I would actually take a look at our website as well, and it will give you a little bit more information about the applicant interviews.
Yeah, I would say the website is a very inclusive spot for information. There's so much in there just for academic requirements, application process, little details to look at when you're doing your letter of intent, things like that. It's a well-rounded web page for all of that information that you're going to need.
another thing to note is that Roberta actually worked in Hawaii. This degree took her to Hawaii to work. Like, and I'm always like, why did you come back? But opportunity again, the opportunity for her to come back and do some fabulous things here. But yeah, she worked in Hawaii.
I did.
Like,
I wrote my American exams, and I said if I was going to the States to work, it was Alaska or Hawaii. It wound up being Hawaii. It was supposed to be 18 months and turned into 7 years. So I had a lot of bench experience there, and working at rural sites, I got a chance to use, you know, probably 3 to 4 out of the 5 disciplines on a daily basis, as well as doing phlebotomy and a variety of different things. So it was active and challenging, but it was a great experience. I got lab management experience while I was there. And then I was offered the opportunity to come back and teach here at the University of Alberta in my old program, the BSc in MedLab Science. And I said, this is going to be great. I came back, did an advanced degree, and here I am, and still enjoying it. So we seem to come back to MLS, but it can take you a lot of different places. You can do a lot of different things. And yes, I see we have a question. But we have graduates go on, they decide they want to be bench techs, and they do that for the next many years, and they might, jump disciplines, and that's fantastic. We have people who've gone on to nursing, infection control, medicine, pathology. We even have a health law lawyer who, as an alumnus, comes back and lectures in one of our courses for us. So it is a very, very well-rounded degree, definitely.
Okay, a couple rapid fire before we wrap up here. Candidates are shortlisted for the interview after reviewing transcripts, GPA, and letter of intent.
Okay, so we shortlist for the interview in the spring, or like before April. At that point, your transcripts and GPAs are with the registrar. So as long as the registrar has not denied you, by the time we offer the interview, then you're certainly welcome to come to the interview. We do expect people to reply yay or nay, I'm coming or I'm not. There is deadlines. If you don't come to the interview, then, for example, we would deny you. We would deny your application.
And is prior lab experience considered an asset?
I would say for the application, probably not so much as it may have the opportunity to present your experience in the interview. It just depends on the interview itself. But I would say if you have some lab experience or a clinical lab experience, you'll have, I would say, maybe a better idea about what you might be getting into for the profession. So if you can do a lab tour, for example, that might be beneficial as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Rhonda and Roberta, for all of the information that you've provided today. This was a great wealth of information, really all inclusive of everything that students need to know about the program and the admission requirements. And we thank everybody for joining us today and learning about this wonderful, wonderful program that we have on campus.
Yes, thank you, Danielle, and thank you to our participants for taking the time to join us. We
Yes.
really appreciate it. If you have questions, please email medlabsc@ualberta.ca. And I'm one of the folks who reads those emails. So say, saw you and Rhonda on the 25th. I have some more questions. Fantastic.
Yes, for sure. Thanks,
Amazing.
Danielle.
Yes, thank you for setting this up.
Yes, thank you.
Always.
And thank you to all the participants. Thank you so much for hearing us out. Apply to the program. We need you. We want you.
Yes.
We expect to see an application from everybody here.
That's
There
right.
you go. There you go.
Amazing. Okay, well, have a wonderful night, everybody. And we will answer any questions through email that we get. And we hope to see you in the program soon.
Yes. Have a lovely evening, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.